Revenge films.
That day, I'd come home from a business trip and was taking a break at the cafe in the airport. When I got on the airplane, I turned off my cell phone. I had forgotten to turn it back on, so I took it out of my pocket and flipped the switch. As soon as it turned on, I was shocked to see 150 messages in my inbox. What? 150 messages? How's that possible? Surely this must be some kind of mistake. I had never seen a message count this high, and I immediately went into a panic as I went to go confirm who the senders were. I was surprised to see that all of the messages were from my colleagues, my boss, my friends, and my parents. The first thing I could think of was that something terrible happened to someone close to me. I called my parents nervously, and my mom picked up in tears. I knew that this must mean something terrible had indeed happened, and the first thought that ran through my head was my dad. But when my mom finally explained it to me, I was shocked to find out that the last night the cliff behind my house had crumbled, and the entire apartment building fell to the ground and was washed away in the landslide. As soon as my parents saw the news, they tried to contact me, but because they couldn't get in touch with me, they could only imagine the worst case scenario and had lost all hope that I was still alive. My mother was sobbing on the other side of the phone, and she mustered out the words,
"Honey, he's alive! He's alive!"
through her quivering voice. I spoke to my mom until she calmed down, and I was able to speak to my dad a little bit too. But I knew that there were a lot of other people out there who were worried about me, so I hung up the phone in order to reply to all of them as well. Next, I called my office. When they realized it was me, "Scott, is that you? We finally got a hold of him! Everyone was so worried about you!" "Well, I'm sorry, I also just found out. And I'm so sorry for making you all worry. Seriously, you have no idea how scared we were." I heard several relieved voices in the background. At my company, they were fairly certain that timing-wise I wouldn't have been home yet after I called them that I was on my way back from the business trip. However, if I was on a direct flight, there was a slight possibility that by the fastest calculation, I could have been home by that time already, and they were worried. I even heard that the current president sent out a notice to the entire company, and a number of employees had volunteered to participate in rescue activities. The more I spoke to everyone about it, the more I became filled with anxiety about the state of my own home, so I decided to head straight there. In the car, a friend after friend who all had the same response. "We finally got a hold of you! Sheesh, don't make us worry like that! But sorry, this isn't about us. I wonder what it's like over there right now. Seems like there's still people who are buried alive under there right now. You know what? I'll head over there now too and help with the rescue efforts." "All right, but be careful, okay? Don't push yourself too much." "I know, I will." I finished all the phone calls and was in the car nervously driving towards my home. They had stopped all traffic in order to let the ambulance go through. Even with the ambulances, they were having difficulty getting there. That alone made me realize just how serious the situation was. The streets were normally very smooth sailing, but this time there was no movement at all, to the point where I think it would have been faster if I had gotten out of the car and walked. Despite the situation, I somehow made it close to my apartment. In my parking space in my usual parking lot, there were all different types of cars parked there because of this emergency situation. I circled the area to see if I could find anywhere to park my car, but everywhere was taken by ambulances or other emergency vehicles. In order to keep the roads clear, they had banned all street parking. In the end, I had to drive off pretty far in order to park my car. From there, I walked towards my apartment building, and the closer I got, the louder and louder the commotion and the uproar was. But when I arrived, more than anything, I was at a complete loss for words at what I saw. What is this? How is this possible? Was there really an apartment building here? There was, wasn't there? Before I left for the business trip, I didn't think twice about my apartment building that was standing here. Now it had been completely destroyed and washed away in the landslide, and there was nothing left to even look at. Are you telling me that inside of this, there are still people waiting to be rescued? What if I hadn't gone on the business trip? What if I had come home sooner? These thoughts raced through my head as I got chills from head to toe. This apartment building had a lot of elderly people who didn't have the most strength. Everybody was going to work at different times, so I wasn't particularly close to anyone. They were just people that I would simply say hello to in the hallways or elevators. But that doesn't change the fact that I was worried about every single one of them, to wash away an entire apartment building. How powerful was the landslide? As I started to help where I could, I saw the shadow of someone that I might know. Scott! Hey everyone, it's Scott! We found Scott! I started to see multiple colleagues and bosses start gathering towards that voice as they all looked at me with disbelief, relief, and happiness. I am so sorry. I had turned off my cell phone on the flight and, as long as you're okay. Although when we saw the news, we were all worried sick to our stomachs. More importantly, there are still people in there that were waiting to be rescued, right? Please, let me help too. Oh, of course. We could really use the help. We need as many hands on deck as possible. Our company also handles a lot of heavy machinery, so I knew how to operate them. After I spoke to my colleagues for a little bit, I had them explain the full current situation and jumped right into the rescue activities. There were a few people around who had already been pulled out, but because they were older and their bodies were weak, there were a lot of people in critical condition on the stretchers while they waited for more ambulances to come. When I showed up in front of the other residents who were waiting around the ambulances, "Ah, you were okay, huh?" "Yes, I was out on a business trip and I only just got back a few hours ago. Are you okay? Please, make sure you're taking care of yourself." "Ah, yes, thank you." Despite making full use of the heavy machinery and continuing the rescue work, in a disaster like this, nobody knew what to expect or where to look. And if I also made one wrong step, I could be putting someone's life at risk too. My parents and my friends, as well as my colleagues at work, all had tears in their eyes knowing that I was safe. There was the possibility that those could have been tears of sadness if the cards had been dealt differently. I joined arms with all my colleagues who were on site to try to cheer up the other residents while we continued the rescue work. As a result, because there were multiple volunteers who had acted quickly, and since everything had crumbled and washed away, it was a little bit easier to pull people out. We were able to get all the survivors out and lessen the damage as much as possible. There were a few elderly residents who were in critical condition, but we were somehow able to save everybody. And once we realized that we didn't lose any lives, a celebration erupted amidst the rubble. After that, since I no longer had my apartment, my company arranged for a temporary room for me, and thanks to that, I had a place to go. Of course, I had lost everything inside of my apartment, including my furniture and electronics, but my friends and colleagues were kind enough to say, "Yeah, it's a bit old, but if you'd like, you can use it. I was just thinking about getting a new one anyway." "Are you sure? I also have a few extra blankets. I'll bring them over for you." That would be a huge help. Thank you guys so much. One by one, they were giving me their furniture and electronics, and some of them even helped me out with a little bit of cash, so I was able to get back onto my old life without much difficulty. Before I moved into a new place, I went back to the old apartment site to see if I could find anything of mine left behind. When I arrived just before the final removal, I saw other residents who lost their homes like me. I could feel the weight upon their shoulders and the heaviness in their step, and I couldn't help but to say something to them. "It's crazy, isn't it? There's really nothing left." "It really is. We have to be grateful that all our lives were saved. It's truly a miracle that in a landslide disaster like that, not one life was lost. We are so lucky. And your colleagues worked so hard for us too. Because you cheered us up and cheered us on, I was able to keep my hope alive in there. Thank you." Where will you go after this?" My daughter and her husband invited us to go live with them. As for the others, the apartment manager has been looking for accommodations for everyone nearby." "Is that so? Well, I'm glad to hear that. Unfortunately, in a situation where I could easily prepare myself to move somewhere, but I know there were a lot of elderly people who didn't have a car and would have much more difficulty moving into a new place. We were going about our daily lives up until then, when suddenly, out of nowhere, everything was taken from us. Within those disasters, there are some that can be prevented by your own care and attention. But this time, and other natural disasters like earthquakes, there are some situations where there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. It was a moment where I realized how truly powerless us human beings are. I just so happened not to be there at the time, so I didn't experience the fear of the moment. But the other residents said that they were genuinely ready to face death that day. When I saw the apartment site that used to have all of our homes in it, without a trace left behind, I couldn't stop thinking, what if I was there? Or what if I had been buried in the landslide? And many times, I would wake up in the middle of the night sweating. I wasn't even there, and that was happening to me. So I couldn't even imagine the fear and trauma that the other residents were carrying with them. Ever since the incident, I made it a habit to periodically check my phone. They say that natural disasters happen right around the time you forgot about them. There's no knowing if something like this may happen to any of us again. But if it does, I hope I can at least get back to the people who care about me more quickly next time.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.